We all know school rules that make sense. Don't cheat, don't fight, maybe don't throw your chairs at substitutes. But then there are others. You know, the rules that sound like somebody dared an AI to make them up and then actually followed through. Today's lesson: when confidence is high and logic is low, anything can become school policy. And where better than to start with the most heartwarming thing a kid can have, until a school decides it's dangerous. When I was 8, my best friend and I had a secret clubhouse under the slide. We had a handshake, matching shoelaces, and an agreement that no one, especially siblings, were allowed. It was a silly and sacred time in my life, and it sounds like something that every child should have the luxury of having, right? Not according to some schools. Apparently, a growing number of schools, including Thomas Battersea in London, England, where Prince George attends, literally ban kids from having best friends. Yep, you heard that right. No besties, no friendship bracelets, and no matching BFF necklaces. No! According to the headmaster, the reason is because I think children would be more balanced in their friendships if they all grew up knowing they all need to be friends with each other. These obsessive friendships can be very hurtful to those who are left out of them, and ostracizing is as painful as physical bullying. These obsessive friendships do need intervention and careful management by adults. Others say exclusive friendships can lead to drama, hurt feelings, and social exclusion, so they decided to cut the whole concept off at the root. The logic seems to be that if no one can have a best friend, then no one gets left out. It's equality by subtraction. No friends, no favoritism, no problem.
No problemo.
Because obviously nothing says social development like turning friendships into contraband. Speaking of dangerous ideas, let's move on from playground politics to the classroom itself, where some words are so scary, they're being banned. And no, that doesn't mean the fun or edgy ones. At Mount Lebanon School District near Pittsburgh, some teachers unofficially cracked down on words that they felt shut down classroom discussion. According to the Wall Street Journal, that meant saying goodbye to words like boring, stuff, whatever, like, thing, and the all-time classic,
I don't know.
The idea wasn't to control how kids talked, it was to push them to actually think. Instead of saying this is boring, students were expected to explain why they weren't interested. Was the pacing slow? Was it hard to relate to? Was the topic too unfamiliar or too abstract? You couldn't just write it off with a shrug and a meh. Sounds great in theory, but in practice, you're basically asking kids to become tiny TED talkers just to say they're not interested. And that's a problem. Sometimes boring is the right word.
Boring.
Not everything sparks joy, and not every reaction needs to be a full-on analysis. Forcing kids to dress up their disinterest in fancy language doesn't teach communication, it teaches performance. Especially for neurodivergent students or English learners. It turns speaking into a pop quiz in self-expression instead of something that it should be, which is just saying they're not interested. And let's be honest, boring is a valid response. Life isn't always thrilling or intellectually engaging. Sometimes it's really boring. But why stop at boring and stuff when you could go full-blown linguistic lockdown? Enter the Gen Alpha slang apocalypse, with schools across the world slapping a ban on a whole dictionary's worth of Gen Alpha slang. Posted right at the school entrance as a warning, they have signs that forbid terms like skibbity, sigma, riz, mewing, gyat, bet, bussin', Ohio, batty, and even terms like
Let him cook.
These words, like much of today's cultural landscape, are spawned from the internet. YouTube videos, internet forums, game quotes, and famous icons all contribute to the rise and prevalence of these kinds of terms. Now, to be fair, some of them do have less than wholesome meanings.
What do you mean by that?
Gyat, for instance, is usually shouted when somebody with a generously proportioned figure walks by. And Riz is Gen Alpha's shorthand for flirt game. So yes, not totally baseless. But other terms, like bussin', which sound inappropriate, actually have a rather tame meaning.
Bussin'.
And I had to ask, what does that mean? What is bussin'?
What does that mean?
Bussin' means it's really good.
So banning slang isn't always about discipline. It's often about discomfort. When teachers don't understand the words flying around in their classrooms, it can feel like they're losing control of the space. And that's understandable. Language moves fast, and generational slang isn't exactly designed to be accessible by adults. But shutting it down entirely sends the wrong message. Instead of encouraging curiosity or connection, it creates distance. What could be a moment of education on language, culture, and even respectful communication gets flattened into a no list. And like any no list, it doesn't erase the behavior. It just pushes it underground. Now, onto a classic control tactic, locking down the loos. Because apparently, basic human functions now need a permission slip. In Adelaide, Australia, a teacher made headlines for limiting students to just one bathroom break per week during class time. The idea, supposedly, was to cut down on distractions and stop kids from faking washroom trips just to skip out on lessons. To crank the absurdity up a notch, at Evergreen Park High School in Illinois, students were only allowed to use the bathroom just 3 times per semester during class. You heard that right. 3 total per semester. That's about once a month, if you're lucky. Developmentally speaking, that's nonsense. Children are not miniature adults equipped with precision timing and steel bladders. Younger students especially can't always predict when they'll need to go, and holding it in can cause stress, anxiety, and actual health issues like infections. Naturally, parents weren't thrilled and quickly took to social media to voice their outrage. I think one summed it up perfectly when they said, "They're kids, not camels." And they're right. Policies like this don't teach responsibility. They just teach students to ignore their bodies and be afraid to ask for basic needs. And at that point, you're not running a classroom anymore. You're running a very stressed out hostage situation.
No.
And nobody can hold their bladders during that. All right, let's take a break from bathroom policies and head to the lunch line, specifically in France. In 2011, the French government decided that ketchup was corrupting young taste buds and threatening the very soul of French cuisine. So they passed a rule. Banishment for the ketchup bottle! School cafeterias could only serve ketchup with foods that make sense, like fries, and even those were limited to once a week. The goal wasn't health, but rather to protect tradition. French officials worried kids were slathering ketchup on everything from baguettes to beef bourguignon, masking the flavors of the food known to be staples of France's rich culinary heritage. Suddenly, a humble condiment came to be seen as a malicious cultural invader. The issue gained so much traction that the education minister at the time insisted, "We have to ensure children become familiar with French recipes so that they can hand them down to the following generation." In response, some students started bringing ketchup from home and turning the corrupt condiment into a point of rebellion.
The finest merchandise this time of John on sale today. Come on down.
It's a reminder that even the toughest red stains aren't safe when tradition's on the line. And finally, let's finish off with a timeless classic, the good old-fashioned dancing band. Yes, it's 2025 and this still happens. At Liberty University in Virginia, one of the largest Christian universities in the US, social dancing is still largely forbidden. According to the university's honor code, activities like clubbing or unsanctioned dancing are off limits. It says so in their student code of conduct. Right here, in fact. So formal dances like prom, not happening. For decades, the university's stance has been that dancing could lead to inappropriate behavior. While there have been some slight exceptions in recent years, such as limited, pre-approved dancing at certain university events, the overall policy remains firmly planted in footloose territory. Liberty insists that the rule hasn't changed, even as students circulate a petition and debate whether a waltz really counts as moral decay. But if you ask me, nothing really gets people moving quite like telling them to sit still. So, what did we learn today? Apparently, when in doubt, some schools will ban anything: friendship, fries, slang, and dancing. And every time, the logic is the same: control equals order. But instead of fostering respect or critical thinking, these rules usually just spark confusion, rebellion, and the occasional underground ketchup trade and dancing ring. Maybe, instead of banning whatever makes adults feel uncomfortable, schools could actually ask students what works best for them.
No.
You never know. Listening to what makes them feel safe, focused, and respected might go further than a pile of restrictive rules. And who knows, it might even save a little sanity for everyone involved.